The rise of Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs was born on February 24, 1955, in San Francisco, California. His real parents were very young when he was born, so they decided to give him up for adoption. Steve was adopted by a couple named Paul and Clara Jobs, who were loving and caring. They raised him in a small town called Mountain View in California. This town is part of Silicon Valley, a place where many big technology companies are located. When Steve was a child, he was very curious. He loved to take things apart to see how they worked. His father, Paul, noticed this and would spend time with Steve in their garage, showing him how machines and electronics worked. This sparked Steve's interest in technology. He didn't just want to play with toys. He wanted to understand how everything worked. As Steve grew older, he went to high school, but he didn't like school very much. He found the classes boring and didn't always do well in his studies. Even though he was smart, he didn't want to follow the rules. He had his own ideas about how to learn and how to live his life. After just one semester in college, he decided to drop out. He felt that the traditional way of learning wasn't for him. Instead of attending classes, he decided to learn in his own way by following his curiosity. After dropping out of college, Steve went to India to search for peace and purpose. He spent time in temples and learned about new ideas and philosophies. When he came back to California, he started working at a small company called Atari, which made video games. It was at Atari that he met Steve Wozniak, a talented engineer who loved working with computers just like Steve did. Together, Steve and Wozniak came up with an idea to build a personal computer. At the time, computers were big, expensive, and only used by companies or scientists. They wanted to create a computer that regular people could use at home. So, they worked together in Steve's garage and built the Apple I, the first computer they ever made. It was very simple compared to today's computers, but it was special because it was made for everyday people. In 1976, Steve and Wozniak started their own company, Apple Computer, to sell their new computers. They quickly followed up with a new version, the Apple II, which was much better and more powerful. The Apple II became very popular because it was the first computer that regular families could afford. People started to see that computers could be useful for everyone, not just for big businesses. But Steve Jobs wasn't always easy to work with. He was very demanding and wanted everything to be perfect. Sometimes he could be difficult, and not everyone liked working with him. In 1985, after some disagreements with people at Apple, Steve was forced to leave the company that he had founded. He was very upset, but he didn't give up. Instead, he decided to start something new. Steve created a new company called Next. Next made computers that were very advanced, but they were also very expensive and were mostly bought by businesses and universities. While Next wasn't a huge success, It gave Steve valuable experience and taught him many lessons. Around the same time, Steve bought a small company called Pixar. Pixar was an animation studio, but it was struggling and didn't make a lot of money. Steve believed in the team at Pixar and helped them grow. After a few years, Pixar made its first big movie, Toy Story, in 1995. It was the first full-length animated movie made completely by computers. Toy Story was a huge success, and it made Pixar very famous. In 1996, Apple, the company that Steve had started, was in trouble. It wasn't doing well, and it needed help. Apple decided to buy Next, and Steve Jobs came back to Apple in 1997. He was happy to return, but he knew he had a lot of work to do. When he arrived, Apple was losing money, and the company wasn't very successful. Steve got to work right away. He focused on making fewer products, but making them better. One of the first things he did was to create the iMac, a colorful and modern-looking computer. The iMac was a big hit, and it helped Apple make money again. People loved how it looked, and it was easy to use. It was different from anything else on the market. In 2001, Steve Jobs introduced the iPod, a small device that could store hundreds of songs. Before the iPod, people had to carry around large CD players, but the iPod was small, portable, and could hold so much music. It changed the way people listened to music, and it made Apple even more successful. But Steve didn't stop there. In 2007, he introduced the iPhone, which was a phone, an iPod, and an internet device all in one. The iPhone was revolutionary because it didn't have a physical keyboard. Instead, it had a touch screen. People could use it to call, text, browse the internet, and listen to music, all in one device. The iPhone changed how people used phones and started a new era of smartphones. Even though Steve was very successful, he faced personal challenges too. In 2004, he was diagnosed with cancer. Despite his illness, Steve continued to work and was involved in Apple's projects. He introduced the iPad in 2010, which was another product that changed the world. The iPad was like a big iPhone, but it didn't make calls. People loved it because it was easy to carry and great for reading, watching videos, and playing games. Steve Jobs passed away in 2011 after a long battle with cancer. His death was a huge loss, but his work and ideas continue to inspire people around the world. Steve Jobs showed us that you don't need to follow the traditional path to be successful. He proved that if you follow your passion and never give up, you can change the world. Steve Jobs' story teaches us that it's okay to fail, and it's okay to make mistakes. What matters is getting up and trying again. He was a dreamer, a doer, and a creator. He will always be remembered as one of the greatest innovators of our time. Thank you for watching. Keep learning and practicing every day. Learn English through stories. Practice speaking with shadowing. Stay with us at Deep into English and improve your English step by step. Remember, easy English stories can help you grow. See you in the next video.